The target was an 84-year-old great-grandmother who required a pacemaker just to keep her heart beating. Nancy Guthrie vanished from her quiet Tucson home in the dead of night. But this was no random burglary. Investigators now believe she was selected with surgical precision, not for what she owned, but for who she represented. At 2:00 a.m. on February 1st, a predator walked onto a porch in Pima County, knowing exactly which vulnerabilities to exploit. The question that continues to haunt the FBI isn't just where Nancy is. Why is she here? Nancy Guthrie is 84 years old. She walks with difficulty and relies on a strict regimen of daily medication. Since her disappearance from her residence in the early hours of February 1st, the silence has been deafening. Despite a reward that has now climbed to $1.2 million, no one has come forward with the information needed to bring her home. Court filings and investigative summaries indicate that the timing of the abduction, 2 a.m., was a calculated choice. This wasn't a crime of opportunity occurring in broad daylight or during a routine errand. It happened when the neighborhood was dark and the witnesses were asleep. Former investigative officials suggest that the lack of interest in the million-dollar bounty reveals a chilling truth. The suspect didn't want money. They wanted Nancy. The investigation has reached a critical junction where two distinct psychological profiles emerge. One path suggests Nancy was a proxy, a way to reach her daughter, national news anchor Savannah Guthrie. The other path suggests Nancy was the primary interest, a vulnerable target chosen specifically for her inability to resist. Which path the Pima County Sheriff's Department and the FBI follow will determine the trajectory of this entire search. But there is a detail in the surveillance footage that suggests the intruder had already lived this moment 1,000 times before. To understand the predator, investigators are looking at the level of planning involved. A standard robbery is a chaotic event driven by the hope of quick profit. A targeted kidnapping, however, requires research. It requires what profilers call homework. Someone knew Nancy lived alone. Someone knew she had mobility issues and a pacemaker. They knew when she went to bed and when the street would be at its quietest. This implies a level of familiarity that goes beyond a casual observer. If Nancy was targeted because of her daughter, the motive shifts toward obsession or professional resentment. High-profile figures like Savannah Guthrie are often surrounded by layers of security, making them impossible to reach directly. In this theory, Nancy was the only accessible link to a woman the world knows, but the suspect could never touch. However, forensic analysts have pointed to a disturbing calm in the suspect's movements. When Mary Ellen O'Toole, a former senior profiler with the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit, reviewed the doorbell camera footage, she noted a lack of nervous energy. Most offenders exhibit physiological signs of stress, fidgeting, hurried movements, or hypervigilance. This individual did not. He approached the porch with a posture that suggested comfort. There are two reasons a criminal acts with such composure. Either they have committed similar acts before, or they have rehearsed the crime so many times in their mind that the physical execution felt like a memory. The fantasy had been perfected long before he stepped onto that property. But there is a secondary possibility that is equally terrifying. Perhaps Nancy wasn't a proxy at all. Perhaps she was the ultimate low-resistance target. In the eyes of a predator, an 84-year-old woman living alone represents a window of opportunity that is almost entirely devoid of risk. No dog, no partner, no visible alarm system. How did he get this information? Investigators are now scrutinizing every service professional who had access to that home: plumbers, electricians, landscapers, or delivery drivers. Anyone who stepped foot on that property in the last 5 years is being considered. One brief visit could have provided all the intelligence needed to plan a 2 a.m. extraction. The search for the how led investigators to a piece of physical evidence found 2 miles away: a single glove. It was discarded, seemingly in haste. yet it carried a biological signature that the suspect thought he had protected. When forensic teams analyzed the DNA, they found a profile that didn't match any known offender in the national system. But that doesn't mean the suspect is a ghost. It means the investigators had to look somewhere else, somewhere no one can hide their heritage. The investigation is now leaning heavily on a technique that revolutionized cold case forensics, genetic genealogy. This is the same method used to identify the Golden State Killer. Even without a direct match in the criminal database, investigators can upload a partial DNA profile to public genealogy sites. They find second cousins. They find the aunts. They build the family tree until the branches narrow down to a single person who was in Tucson on February 1st. While the DNA offers a long-term path to an arrest, the surveillance footage provides immediate, albeit subtle, clues. The suspect wore an Ozark Trail 25-liter backpack. While this is a brand exclusive to Walmart, the Pima County Sheriff has noted that the purchase trail is not as simple as checking a retail receipt. These items are frequently sold on secondary markets, eBay, Facebook Marketplace, or at garage sales. The backpack may have been an anonymous second-hand acquisition designed to break the chain of custody. Then there is the matter of the suspect's face. Despite the ski mask and gloves, he made a critical forensic error. He didn't fully cover his mouth. This small gap allowed for the escape of cellular material, respiratory droplets that could provide the very DNA now being processed in a lab. But beyond biology, there is the behavior. Profilers have drawn a chilling comparison to the Zodiac killer. The suspect in Nancy's case didn't just take her, he engaged with the media. He went to a news station with a ransom note. He communicated with TMZ. These are not the actions of a man trying to stay in the shadows. These are the actions of a man who craves the spotlight. He wanted the world to see his power. He wanted to watch Nancy Guthrie on television, knowing he was the reason for her distress. This suggests a high degree of media consumption. The suspect is likely watching every update, reading every comment, and monitoring the very investigation designed to catch him. He is feeding off the narrative. And then there is the pixel-level analysis of the footage. As the suspect moved on the porch, his clothing shifted. Investigators believe they have spotted a mark on his skin that could be a tattoo. In the world of criminal investigation, a tattoo is a serial number. It indicates regional styles, specific artists, or even institutional history. If that design can be clarified, the suspect's anonymity disappears instantly. The evidence suggests a man who is meticulous, yet prone to moments of ego-driven exposure. He planned the entry, he planned the timing, and he planned the target. But as the $1.2 million reward remains unclaimed, a new theory is beginning to circulate among the task force. They aren't just looking for a stranger who watched from afar. They are looking for someone who has abruptly changed their routine since February 1st. Because the person who did this didn't just disappear into the night. They went back to a life that no longer fits them. What does a changed routine look like? According to profilers like Jim Clemente, the people close to this suspect would have noticed subtle but significant shifts. An unexplained absence on the night of the disappearance, a sudden obsession with the Guthrie news coverage, an uncharacteristic level of irritability, or a sudden unexplained departure from their normal schedule. The investigation is also focused on the physical description of the suspect's gait. Analysis of the surveillance footage shows a specific walking pattern, a build and gait that is being compared against individuals with local ties to the Tucson area. This isn't just about how he looks, it's about how he moves. Every human has a unique kinetic signature, and in this case, it's one of the few pieces of unmasked evidence available. The reward of $1.2 million is strategically placed to trigger what investigators call moral friction. It is a life-changing amount of money designed to make a confidant or a family member weigh their loyalty against their future. Someone knows who owned that 25-liter Ozark Trail backpack. Someone knows who has a tattoo in that specific location. The task force, now bolstered by the FBI, is also re-examining the ransom note and the communication with media outlets. They are looking for linguistic fingerprints, specific turns of phrase or spelling errors that might point to a specific geographic origin or educational background. The choice to go to TMZ specifically suggests a suspect who understands the mechanics of modern celebrity culture and knows exactly how to maximize the emotional impact on Nancy's family. Procedurally, the case is at a standoff. The Pima County Sheriff's Department has remained firm in its jurisdictional control, despite offers of assistance from outside volunteer groups like the United Cajun Navy. This indicates that the official investigation is likely sitting on sensitive information that has not been released to the public, information that could be compromised by well-meaning but untrained searchers. The DNA results from the Florida lab are the current clock in this case. Once a genealogical profile is established, the timeline moves rapidly. We have seen this in dozens of cases over the last 3 years. The silence lasts for months, and then an arrest happens within 48 hours of a genealogical match. The legal stakes are absolute. A kidnapping of this nature, involving an elderly victim with significant health vulnerabilities, carries the highest possible sentencing guidelines. If the suspect is watching, he knows the window for a negotiated surrender is closing. Once the DNA identifies him, the opportunity for leniency vanishes. Nancy Guthrie has been missing since February 1st. Every day that passes without her medication makes the situation more dire. The FBI is currently focusing on pre-offense behavior, checking records for anyone who may have been trespassed from the area or who had been reported for stalking-like behavior in the months leading up to the abduction. The next major milestone will be the release of further forensic details regarding the glove and the DNA profile. Investigators are also asking the public to look back at their own records. Do you have doorbell footage from the Tucson area between 1 a.m. and 4 a.m. on February 1st? Did you see a vehicle that seemed out of place? Someone knows this man. They know his backpack, they know his tattoo, and they know his obsession. The $1.2 million reward is active. The number for the FBI is 1-800-CALL-FBI. The Pima County Sheriff can be reached at 520-351-4900. The suspect believes he is in control of the narrative. He believes his mask and his planning have made him invisible. But he left his DNA, he left his image, and he left a trail of behavior that leads directly to a door somewhere in this country. It is only a matter of time before someone opens it. The question is, who will claim the reward first? And will Nancy Guthrie finally be brought home? The investigation continues, and we are watching every development.